good guy.
Okay.
Such like a talker. Loves it. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. He's into like, yeah, I mean, he's in the like medium size. There's like a really big, and then there's this medium, and then there's like a really tiny. He's not quite in the tiny, but he's in the medium, and he will build tags. He builds fire station. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Alright, I gotta they were coming, but I haven't seen them. They came out today. Yeah.
Are they adding the bills to other hearings already scheduled like they did today, or is it simply on meeting? Yeah. It is. Yes. Right.
Is that 86 plus 10?
Yeah. I think John was going to try and connect with to see how he got. He didn't want to, I think, put in a request to have something changed, so we just have to touch base with him. Okay, great.
everybody. Welcome to the Committee on Public Service. I'm Representative James Murphy, the House Chair of the committee. I'm here with some of my colleagues, and we'll let our colleagues introduce themselves. To my right.
Rep. Aaron Baker from the City of Hoyle.
Rep. Chris Hall. So thank you very much. We have a sign-in sheet. For those of you who haven't signed in, please feel free to sign in. A number of people have already signed in. We will take some people out of order, some elected officials who are coming and going today. Some of our colleagues will do their schedule. We will take them out of order. But otherwise, we'll take the order in which you signed in. We have a couple of panels that we'll start off with. Again, if you have any cell phones or anything, just shut them off. Try to keep the testimony down to 5 minutes, just to accommodate anybody that's coming in and wants to testify. We also accept testimony past today, so if you want to send us a letter, feel free to do so after today. This will not close out the testimony for today's hearing. We do want to hear from everybody, so please feel free to share with us anything you want to share with, but try to stay within the 5 minutes so we get to everybody. So with that, we'll start off with a couple of people, Sean Cronin and Rob Cunningham. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Chairman, it's a pleasure to be here today before your bill, before your committee to talk about the Municipal Modernization Bill. My name is Sean Cronin. I'm the Senior Deputy Commissioner for Local Services. Prior to joining the administration just under a year ago, I spent 17 years in local government. So it's a pleasure to be able to sit in front of you and the other committees talking about changes to municipal statutes that will go a long way to making municipalities a little bit more efficient and effective in their day-to-day operations. And having lived within a lot of these rules and regs, I know firsthand how cumbersome they can be. So it really is a pleasure to be able to sit here and talk to you about some of these things. So I know today we're going to be talking about unemployment, civil service, OPEB trust funds, and sharing of retiree health insurance costs amongst communities. Director of Unemployment Insurance, Robert Cunningham, is here today to speak on the unemployment. I'll address the other ones, but if it's okay, I'd just like to spend 1 or 2 minutes giving a brief overview of the Municipal Modernization Bill, really focusing on the approach we took to develop the bill. From the get-go, we wanted it to be inclusive. We worked with local officials, both elected and appointed. We met with various professional associations that spend their day-to-day life in municipal finance, assessors, collector treasurers, auditors, accountants, procurement officials, etc. We had an online survey that was sent out to all 351 municipalities, and we got over 235 municipal and school district responses with over 1,300 suggestions. In addition, the Lieutenant Governor's been to at least 130, 40, whatever the number is now, municipalities in her tour across the state. And most of the bill comes from those interactions. It wasn't something that was really driven internally. It was a direct result of those discussions. So because of that, we really believe that it is representative of the issues that municipal officials are most interested in. And the bill was really centered on 4 cornerstones. 1, updating and eliminating obsolete laws, promoting greater independence at the local level, using common sense to streamline state oversight. A number of those follow my department, Division of Local Services, and then providing municipalities with greater flexibility. The bill also reflects the fact that expectations have changed regarding municipal government. There's been significant improvements in professional management in all types of jobs, whether it's a manager, a mayor, assessor, collector, whatever the job is. There's been a lot of improvement over the decades. And technology has helped transform local government and the expectations that residents have of your local leaders. So we believe that this bill is indicative of the kind of local-state partnership that is essential to making sure that all municipalities have a chance to thrive. Providing local officials with tools required to deliver services more effectively, becoming more efficient, and be free of cumbersome requirements that are decades old is of the utmost importance to the administration, and this bill provides for that. And I think the issues before you this afternoon are great examples of simplifying and streamlining rules that municipalities must follow. And it also provides some greater flexibility for municipalities as well. And primarily the unemployment one, realize some cost savings for municipalities. So I'm going to speak to civil service, retiree health insurance, cost sharing, and OPEB trust, and Director Cunningham will speak to unemployment. So civil service, the proposal that's before the committee today is to remove the requirement that a municipality obtain legislative approval to remove position or positions from civil service. So currently, as you know, there's a local process that results in a local decision, and it's, as you know, those can be pretty difficult discussions at a local level. But the point is those discussions are had at the local level, and there's a local decision that comes from those discussions. So we believe that then having to go through the process of obtaining a home rule petition and coming to the legislature for approval is a step that the municipalities shouldn't have to take. They have the debate at the local level, they make the decision. We believe that they should be able to implement that decision without having to come for special legislation. Retiree health insurance cost sharing. So as you know, currently law allows communities to charge other communities for an employee who might have spent time in one or two or more municipalities. Pretty similar to the way pensions are assessed between communities now. Unfortunately, unlike pensions, it's not a simple calculation. Pensions, if you're in at 8+2 from day one, your whole life it's 8+2. For health insurance, you go from community to community. It can be 75-25 in one, 50-50 in another, 90-10 in another. And during the course of your career, you can go from married to single, single to married and back, all those different changes. So it's a lot different than the simple calculation for pension sharing. So while it's a great idea in theory, in practice it's unworkable and unenforceable, which is why we're recommending that statute be eliminated. OPEB trusts. So currently there is a statute that allows OPEB funding to be deposited into a fund. However, that fund is not GASB compliant, nor is it IRS compliant. It really basically is a stabilization fund to park OPEB monies into. So what the proposed language does is expressly permit local governments to create a GASB compliant and an IRS compliant trust fund. It also defines what a governmental entity is, so it allows housing authorities, regional development authorities, regional councils of government, and others to be able to establish a trust fund. It also allows a governmental unit to participate in another governmental unit's trust fund. So if communities want to go in together, say into the state's trust fund, they could do that as well. It would grandfather any communities that have gathered or have gotten special legislation for their own OPEB trust, or they could accept Section 20, either one. And then lastly, one of the things it does is it requires an actuarial reporting requirement so that DLS and PERAC can better monitor the status of unfunded OPEB liabilities. And just to close on that, it's really important that the fund be GASB compliant, because that will then allow the municipality and the actuary to be able to assume a higher rate of return. If it's GASB compliant, you're able to have a blended rate. So that obviously reduces your overall level of unfunded liability. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Cunningham to speak to the unemployment proposals. And I don't know if you want to do it now or after he speaks, but obviously any questions on these items or anything in the bill in general here today, and any time you have questions on the bill, feel free to give me a call.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Murphy and Timilty and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to testify in the two sections of this proposal that relate to unemployment insurance. My name is Robert Cunningham, the Director of the Department of Unemployment Assistance, serving under Secretary Walker in the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development. In March of 2012, Governor Patrick convened a municipal unemployment insurance task force, which included legislators, municipal officials, and municipal employee unions. I've provided a report to the committee staff and can make as many available as the committee needs. The task force and the subsequent work of the agency recognize that most municipalities are reimbursable employers, meaning that they are charged dollar for all of the UI benefits that are paid out to claimants who charge against their account. Two of the recommendations from that task force are before you today in sections 3 and 4 of the bill. Section 3 corrects an inequity between school-based staff that work for the school department and school-based staff that work in other municipal departments. Now, this does not impact school-based staff that work for private entities like private bus drivers, but currently teachers and school-based staff under the employment of the school department can be exempted from UI benefit eligibility if they are notified by their employer that they have a reasonable assurance of returning to work in the fall. As such, they remain work-attached and ineligible for unemployment. However, cities or towns which choose to or are required to under their contracts have school-based employees in other departments, they're not subject to this provision. As such, in one town, a crossing guard can collect unemployment over the summer, while in an adjacent community, they would be ineligible as employees of the police department. The same holds true for bus drivers, custodians, or food service workers who work for the schools but sit under a different municipal department. So employees of the school department, if they get reasonable assurance, they can't collect. But employees of other town departments can collect. Section 3 would put a burden on municipal employers, all of those municipal employers, to notify the employees of their reasonable assurance to return to work. By meeting the timeliness for notification, the employers would avoid that liability dollar for benefit payments to these individuals over summer vacation, spring breaks, and even the day after Thanksgiving, which is routinely claimed for unemployment benefits by school-based employees who are not subject to the reasonable assurance provisions. Section 4 provides a reasonable approach to address a municipal concern about retirees who reach their 960-hour caps. When towns or cities bring back a retiree, they're subject to this 960-hour cap, and when they hit that cap, they apply for unemployment. Under the current law, when they get that and can no longer work, they can collect unemployment benefits based on a separation from the employer, and they, at the same time, will continue to collect their public pension. Unfortunately, on some occasions, there are examples of individuals with sizable pensions then collecting sizable unemployment benefits, which the cities or towns must pay in full through their unemployment insurance bill. This proposal does not change the rule regarding eligibility, as those claimants would still be eligible for unemployment, but that's a federal law that we can't exempt. However, this institutes, at the recommendation of that municipal task force and adoption and support from the administration, a requirement that a pension offset of 65% be implemented. The offset's against the unemployment benefits. So if you have a pension of $1,000 a week, 65% or $650 would be applied against as an offset of your unemployment benefit. So those pensions of $57,750 or more a year would be mooted by that benefit, while the people with the lowest pensions would have a very small impact, if any. The simple premise is to address the highest cost to the taxpayers and the municipalities, and to impact as low as possible the folks with the lowest pensions. To be clear, the first year of service, there's already a 50% pension offset for retirees. And so this is not instituting a new concept, but it does continue an offset into future benefit years where there's currently no offset at all. Like Mr. Cronin, I'm happy to answer any questions either now or at the subject to needs of the committee.
Any questions for Rob or Sean?
And just a quick one, there's obviously a lot to digest in the bill. I'm sure some are more positive on this policy than others, and some are more palatable for the legislature. Just to go back just to one of the points you brought up earlier, just so I'm clear on the removal of civil service positions. Would that be a temporary position? Because a lot of times we see they want to keep someone that's the current fire chief, the police chief, when they hit the retirement age, they want to keep someone that's they're looking for a waiver. I'm not an expert on civil service, but when these positions were established, they were legislatively approved to be civil service. Don't they need to, you would take that out of it completely when it was temporary or permanently wanted to change? Is that the thought behind it?
The only change being proposed is to basically stop the last step of the process, which is coming to the legislature via home rule petition. So whatever the rules are now, you go through those at a local level, you have your debate, but now town meeting, for example, approves local option, then they appear before this committee and basically go through the same debate. So our thinking is that if they've already had that debate at the local level, they don't have to come back to the state and have it again.
So approval by the majority of the city council and approved by the mayor?
It's a great question. So currently it is in a town meeting. The language here does say Board of Selectmen. So admittedly there is a change there, but the concept is still local discussion, local decision, not have to come back to the state.
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. If this goes through, Director, what assurances would we have on the local level as a legislature? I've been very reluctant to advance some of the home rules that have come before, because when civil service works, it's as close as we get to an aristocracy of merit. Just yesterday in Boston and Quincy, they put on 59 new firefighters, all who happen to be veterans. So if there is some reluctance of advancing this, and I'm not saying I have that, it would be that we would have some assurance that in any town, regardless that there are some towns that haven't fought the requirement, state requirement that they have over 12,000 people, they have to have full-time veterans agents. So not every town recognizes that, and I think that most of us in the legislature, and I think the Commonwealth as a whole, would love to see the men and women who are returning from sacrificing overseas for us, that they would get preferences. And I think we've built in through the Veterans Committee some of these preferences, and I think as we embark or advance this, I'd like some assurance that there would be some fair process, and certainly veterans would go to the top of the list.
Yeah, and I think you'll hear after us from MMA and perhaps a manager or two about what they've done at a local level for that exact reason, to make sure that veterans still get preference. Yeah, this bill in no way, shape, or form attempts to do anything with the veterans' preference. It's all about really eliminating that last step of having to come back to the legislature.
Thanks very much.
Any more questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're joined by our colleague, Mr. Carol Shire from Oregon. Welcome, everyone. To call for the panel, item main panel, Katie McHugh. Anybody show up for the Katie?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so good afternoon. For the record, I'm Katie McHugh, MMA's Senior Legislative Analyst, and thank you, Chairman Timmelty, Chairman Murphy, and members of the committee for the opportunity to provide testimony today. As you can imagine, the MMA is in strong support of House 3907, which is the portion of the Governor's Municipal Modernization Bill that's before your committee. As you know, the bill has been broken up into 5 separate bills. I'm joined here today by some experts and practitioners in the field, so I'll be very brief in my comments and then we'll turn it over to them. I'm joined today by Mark Waldman, Treasurer Collector in the town of Wellesley, John Petrin, Town Administrator in the town of Burlington, and Mel Kleckner, Town Manager in the town of Brookline. I'll just start by saying, again, for the record, that the MMA supports all 5 of the provisions, the 2 under municipal unemployment insurance reform, civil service, the retiree health insurance legislation, and the OPEB trust fund legislation that's before your committee today. And Senator, just to speak specifically to your concerns about the civil service provision, because we've heard that, and as you know, there's also language in a separate bill that mirrors the language that's in this bill that does the same thing. We at the MMA have had extensive conversations with the veterans community, both the department, the Association for Fallen Heroes, and other veterans groups about how to preserve a preference at the local level for veterans, and I know John Petrin can speak to this specifically in Burlington, while outside of the civil service system. The reasons that communities are interested in exiting civil service are not directly related to veterans. There's a number of other concerns and challenges with the system, and many communities have found working with their local labor unions that they've put in place systems that work better for hiring and promotion, but in no way want to exclude veterans from that conversation. So we've had extensive conversations and have committed to continuing to do so. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mark Waldman, and then we'll answer questions collectively afterward if that works for you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm going to speak to 2 specific provisions, the retiree healthcare cost sharing and the OPEB trust fund section. And I'll largely be echoing the positions stated by Sean Cronin just before us. The retiree healthcare cost sharing section, which I have down as section 13, that is a law that was put in effect several years ago. And since the day it became the law, I've been working with the MMA and various members of the legislature to try and get this to be a more workable act. And the concept we agree with, it definitely works on the retirement side. There's a specific section within the retirement statute, chapter 32, that governs how these monies and services are billed, but it did not translate cleanly over to health insurance, largely because Sean had mentioned previously, there is a single Chapter 32 set of rules that govern all retirees in the Commonwealth, whether you retire from Wellesley, the Commonwealth of Mass, the town of Burlington, or the town of Brookline. On the health insurance side, that is not the case. Many towns have different contribution levels, different benefit structures, and the way this law was built was that the billing community needs to have knowledge on, first of all, who are retirees that have creditable service from other communities. For the most part, most communities don't know that. Their retirement systems may, but the community itself and the billing impetus is put on the treasurer of each community. So it's incumbent on the treasurer to have to go find that information, whether it's from, in Wellesley's case, we have our own retirement system, or in Burlington's case, they're a member of the Middlesex County, so they would have to go to Middlesex County. So consequently, what's happened is the Mass Teachers Retirement System got out in front of this and has put out information to all communities about which of their members have service levels creditable to other school districts. Consequently, everything that's been built that I've seen so far has simply been on the teacher side, and very few municipalities have billed back service for non-teacher because they just don't have access to that information. Plus, they don't have access to the information as to what the contribution levels are in the other communities, and the law specifically says the community will bill the lower of either their contribution rate or the other. So it's just a very difficult bill to administer. I don't want to say that nobody has done this. There have been a number of communities that have. Mr. Petron's community is one. But there is still a lot of confusion out there. So the key to this is we believe in the concept, we don't believe in the mechanics of the existing law, and what we would ideally love to see is that this currently be repealed and then brought back and studied a little more heavily in the context of an overall OPEB reform, should we ever get to that, and hopefully we will, that it really does tie in very much to OPEB reform. So that would be our hope, that we can currently do away with the existing legislation, but clearly not give up on the concept, because we do believe it can be made workable. The other item that I have to discuss, Section 14, which is the OPEB Trust Fund. Wellesley was very much one of the early communities in terms of implementing OPEB. I'm sure, as you all know, the whole OPEB thing grew out of governmental accounting standard boards, 45 and 43, their pronouncements. They were modeled after stuff that went on in the private sector and FASB rules 106. Right from the get-go, the GASB rules were very specific that in order for you to properly account for OPEB and to reserve OPEB funds, you needed to have an irrevocable trust set up. Initially, most of us early adopters had to create our funds and had to have special legislation to do such. Subsequently, Chapter 32B, Section 20 was passed by the legislature, and in an effort to comply with the GASB rules, but specifically what didn't happen in that section was to really identify this as an irrevocable trust that can only be used for the purposes of retiree health care. That is one of the key things that this new bill does. The other key thing I really want to stress is I think the administration did a fantastic job on writing out this particular section of the Act. Very detailed in terms of the structure that a community has to have in place to govern its OPEB trust, who has the responsibility, who is the custodian, who are the trustees, specifically how do those trustees get appointed, what are their responsibilities, and how the money can be invested. All very, very important pieces when you're talking about, in some cases, such as Wellesley, we now have $40 million in our OPEB trust. Very sizable amounts of money that need more than the sort of half a paragraph that previously existed in 32B, Section 20. So very much in favor. One of the things this proposal does do, though, it does say if you have a special act in place, you are absolutely, you can continue to operate under your special act, but if you want to adopt these new rules, you'll have to go back into, the acceptance piece of this and accept this 20A and 20B. So it doesn't, preclude those who have been operating the way they've been operating for a long time to have to do anything different unless they want to. So again, we thought that was a very important piece. So you know, from the MMA's viewpoint and some municipalities, I think, certainly on the OPEB piece, I think there's going to be real unanimity on support. Maybe not quite as much unanimity on the healthcare cost sharing, retiree healthcare cost sharing, just because some places have gone further than that with the other. But again, we do definitely believe that's a bill that needs fixing. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, John Petrin, Town Administrator in Burlington. So I'm going to speak on two issues. One is the unemployment insurance. Director Cunningham, I think, gave a very brief but effective explanation of the issues here. So I guess from our perspective, we just don't understand why, if employees, certain departments in our department being, in our towns being the schools, have this capacity, why doesn't general government have the same capacity? So I think that's the, you know, the crux of it, and we're spending money on these issues that we shouldn't be. It just doesn't make sense to us. So on the second issue, civil service. I was here exactly a year ago, last January, spent a lot of time with your committee on the issue of the town of Burlington exiting the civil service system. At that time, we discussed a lot of these issues moving forward, and I think what you heard from the proponents at that time was, in our opinion, civil service does not work. It is broken. It is an outdated system. It needs to be updated. It is not being updated. Thus, we needed to take action moving forward. I understand that there's differences of opinion, you know, on this, but what it came down to is our community decided to move forward in this fashion. So when we did it, we negotiated with our two police unions. We have a police patrol and a police command union. We went through a negotiation, concluded those negotiations, and we came to an agreement with those two unions. We took it to town meeting, we took it to the Board of Selectmen, and then we brought it here. So we had community support to make the change. And that's why we move forward. And I think that's the crux of this legislation, is if its local legislation says we want to do it, we should be able to do it. And after a very long discussion, one of the members of your panel, Senator Donnelly, who was, you know, our senator, I think, made an impassioned speech to you about home rule and the fact that it was decided at the local level, knowing all the issues that were there. So one example, when we exited, we administered our own exam, and we had 321 people take that exam. From that, we took a score of 80% or better, and anybody with an 80% or better went on to the next level of the physical review. But with veterans, we took anybody with a 70%. So all veterans who passed the exam were brought forward and moved forward in that process. So we gave veterans preference in that situation. So we offered 117 of physical testing, and then out of that, the 37 highest were brought into an interview panel, which was comprised of several members of our police department, patrolmen, command officers, our HR department, and they selected those 37 for finalists. Out of those, 17 were selected as finalists to be brought forward to the chief and myself. One of the things that it allowed us to do was hire an Indian American in our community. So my police department has 65 sworn police officers, all white, 3 female out of that. And so we had no representation from minority groups. In the town of Burlington, approximately 10% of that community is Indian American. So we had one candidate who came forward who's Indian American, has his bachelor's degree, actually enlisted in the Marine Corps, and nearly finished boot camp before he developed a medical allergy. And he had to be dismissed, not because he wanted to. It was 3 days prior to graduation. He was, you know, heartbroken, but he's not a veteran. But we were able to hire this person that now represents 10% of my community. He speaks 3 languages. He's a Muslim. I have a mosque in my community. I now have a Muslim police officer who's Indian, who is a part of that community. That is huge, you know, for our community. That was loud. He was on the civil service list, but we would not have gotten down to him in order to give him an interview as part of that process. So there's more than just an exam, a written exam and Senator Donnelly, thank you. I was just talking about how you last year talked about home rule rights, and that a community should be able to decide their fate relative to civil service. And so we were able to hire that individual. He's in the academy today, and when he comes out, he will represent that Indian American Muslim population in my community, which is prevalent. and needs to be represented. We also hired a female officer. I had 3. I've been able to add to that, who might not have qualified under the civil service. It gives us the opportunity to review. Veterans should have some preference. They should be recognized for the service that they did, but I will argue it should not be absolute. It should not be the final. We should not have a police department of only veterans. Veterans represent 10% of this community in the United States. There are other people we need to represent, and there needs to be a balance. We need to give recognition. We did in our process by allowing all veterans with 70% score or more to be interviewed, and so we gave that recognition. That's our home rule piece. That's what we were able to do on a local level. And we were able to meet other needs of the local level moving forward as well. So that's, be glad to take questions on that, but I know I spent, a lot of time with you last year on that issue. So I think that's my review of civil service, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Kleckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. I'm here really representing 3 organizations, my town of Brookline, the MMA, of which I'm currently the Vice President of the organization, and also the Metro Mayors Coalition, which is an MAPC initiative made up of Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, and many of the other urban core communities. And we are supportive in general of the governor's legislation to modernize local government, and would make just a couple comments. One is, we always, the governor and the legislature constantly struggle with the finances and trying to provide cities and towns with the resources they need, and that's very difficult in this environment. And this is an effort to perhaps create those resources by avoiding mandates and some of the other obstacles to efficient and effective local government. I would just say on the issue of home rule, we talk about home rule a lot. It's a great concept, but to actually implement home rule can be very difficult, and there are many different barriers. And I think this, at least with respect to the civil service, I think it makes sense. Just to point out on the veterans, I noticed that there was an article the other day about the city of Lawrence, similar to Mr. Petrin's situation, where they have a very large Latino community and are looking to hire more persons with that background, and they're unable to do that through the civil service system. So I think it depends on your situation, your community, and obviously the legislature should make sure that it feels comfortable that the vote coming out of the city and town is representative of that particular city and town. With that, I will conclude and be happy also to answer any questions you may have. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm a little late coming. I had a meeting, and I heard the manager talking about Burlington home rule last year. And the home rule is the home rule. When a home rule petition comes in, we usually honor the home rule petition. But I have a question on why we need to make any changes that, as you stated, what worked last year. Why can't you continue to do what you've been doing in the past?
So you made the speech last year, hate to do this to you, Senator, but you said if it is home rule, then we should just pass through at this point what the community wants. So if that's the case, then it should be done at the local level, and we should not have to go through. It took us 1 year. We were held up 1 year in getting the legislature. We passed it at town meeting in May of 2013, and we weren't able to proceed until almost May of 2014 or 15 to implement. So we were held up for 1 year on hiring positions that we needed at that time, and it just takes too long in the process. So if you're going to recognize it as home rule, then that's what it should be, and we should be able to get on with our business and not have to wait.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one question. As it's now, everyone goes through the local process, and then you come here, and it's I don't know how difficult, other than the time it's putting it through to your rep or senators and so forth, and getting it on the agenda here. Do you recall how many home rule petitions that have come before us that we've refused, and what those percentages might be, and what reasons they might have been for?
Sure.
these type of positions?
Sure. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me. I would say that in most cases, they're not refused. You know, at the end of the day, we get where we need to go. I think what we saw last year with Burlington and Westwood and a couple other communities, it was a really dragged out process. And decisions were made at the local level to move forward, and there was just quite a long lag. And in some communities, it was longer than a year before they could actually get to where they needed to go after going through that local process. So it's not a matter of refusal at the end of the day, it's a matter of streamlining an efficient system of government at the local level on this particular issue.
If you expedited a process, at this level, then maybe there might be consideration. But we feel because it's not expedited, because there was a lot of negotiation as to whether we were going to be allowed to proceed, and it was a very difficult discussion, with this committee. So I think that's why we're saying, why do we have to get to that level?
And if I put one other follow-up, Mr. Chair, so the 70% for veterans, do I agree it's important to include our veterans? And I don't think you didn't agree with that. You just put
Absolutely.
a different spin on it in terms of, the community and the diversity in the community. But is the 70% the number most communities use, scoring-wise? Is that an arbitrary number? Would all the communities pick a different number? How would that work?
That's a great question. So in Burlington, it's a policy, so it's not statutory. So obviously that could change from community to community. We have had some conversations with the veterans community, and I think they're looking to propose something that would be more consistent across communities, and we're certainly open to that conversation. Currently, if a community is out of civil service, which as you know they can do now, they can put in place any sort of, a policy that's agreed upon, and that just happens to be what Burlington's done. I would say that's probably common, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily consistent.
One quick follow-up, and maybe we can actually set time to talk, so directly with Katie. I guess my question is, moving away from this home rule petition conversation for a second. If I go and speak to my director of retirement and pension and benefits in my municipality, and MMA supporters, how well versed do you think that they are in this changes? I really have a conversation with them about everything, again, some of it's new to me, doing this committee, but, the pension sharing, unfunded liability, something that you know about, but the UI eligibility and how that's going to affect all the complex stuff, all stuff that has a real effect on local and state budgets. Our local people, are they up to speed on this stuff, do you feel? The local directors of pensions and retirements? Or is that sort of,
I will not speak for your local officials, specifically in the city representative. I will say that we've spent a lot of time since the governor proposed this bill getting information out. There's certainly a lot of information on our website, as have other organizations like the Mass Government Finance Officers Association, the Mass Municipal Personnel Association. So the information is out there. We're certainly happy to speak to anyone and help, explain things as that's appropriate. Yeah. And Mr. Chair, I know you have a very busy hearing today. If I could just add 30 seconds on the unemployment insurance piece, because I think it's particularly important. I think it's just important whenever we talk about issues relative to unemployment insurance to keep in mind, and Director Cunningham mentioned this, that cities and towns are reimbursable, as are many nonprofit organizations. So unlike the private sector where you pay into a solvency fund, so if you get a claim against you and then it's found that that claimant did not deserve unemployment insurance, it's all worked out through your insurance. Cities and towns pay dollar for dollar for unemployment insurance in Massachusetts. And we actually have, I believe, one of, if not the lowest rate in the country of ever recouping those funds if it was proven that someone does not deserve unemployment, like somebody collecting unemployment on the Friday after Thanksgiving, because the structure in their municipality is such that they're not given the same reasonable insurance as a teacher is given. So a teacher cannot collect unemployment on the Friday after Thanksgiving because school is closed, because of course the school calendar says school is closed. But a crossing guard who also works on a school calendar, of course, but is paid through the police budget, can collect unemployment insurance because they're not given that same reasonable assurance, which is what this language would fix. I just think it's important to remember that these are, taxpayer dollars that are paid really, literally dollar for dollar. The checks are written as opposed to paying into an insurance fund.
John, quick question for you. In Burlington, how did you come up with the policy? Was it voted on, or was it just done by the administration? How did you come up with that policy?
It's a Board of Selectmen policy. So it was publicly voted by the Board of Selectmen. So the chief and I, in many situations, we develop and put it, for a discussion. So we worked with one of our selectmen who actually was our veterans administrator. He's now retired, but he was a veteran services officer for the town. He was chairman of the board, so we worked with him to incorporate that, and then the Board of Selectmen approved that policy.
Was your model you used, or was it just made up on your own?
We made it up on our own. There weren't many, communities that had gone through the removal of civil service at the time. So we took part of it from actually Town of Wellesley. We used some of their information, but as to the veterans piece, we made sure we incorporated that in there.
Okay. Katie, quick question.
Sure.
The committee worked with you on the health insurance from people that move in town.
Yeah,
So we moved the bill out of the committee that we
Yes.
thought was fixed,
you did.
and now we're presented with a repeal.
Yes.
And now I'm faced with two positions.
I know.
in May and the same issues.
Yeah, we're faced with two positions too.
Figure it out.
Yeah,
Where do you stand?
I appreciate that, Chairman. So the bill that you were kind enough to file for us and move forward fixes some of the pieces of this. Certainly it fixes some of it. For example, one of the things that the bill does is makes a standard contribution rate of 50-50, which fixes the piece that Mark talked about of communities having to know what other communities' contribution rate is. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge that we admittedly did not put in that bill, and we talked about this, and is the enforcement piece. So right now, a city sends out a bill to another community. Many communities aren't paying. Nobody really knows what to do with it. Some communities aren't using the appropriate contribution rate, and the only remedy for that is taking another community to court, which some people are doing, and we don't feel like is really a helpful standard across the Commonwealth. So at the end of the day, I think our official position in terms of what would be ideal would be to repeal and then fix in the larger context of OPEB reform, because we absolutely believe with the concept. As Mark said, we've spent years and with your help trying to get a fix, but even with those fixes, I don't think we're still quite all the way there. So we believe in the concept, but the current language just isn't working for most communities.
So if we repeal it, that's what you're looking for at this point?
Yeah.
In regards to the governor's bill, what is the committee's position? Do you agree with all of it? Do you have any recommendations as to how to change a little bit of it? I mean, you in support of the whole bill as it's written?
We are supportive of the bill as it's written. There may be, very specific things that we would want to have conversations on. Certainly the pieces that are before you today, we're in full support of.
Okay. All right, thank you. Further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sticking with the idea of having panels, illustrious former colleague here, Senator.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
What do you want to bring up with you, Steve?
Tom Gosnell, the president of the AFT. And I have a short prepared testimony, which I'll read, and then I'll just ad lib, Mr. Chairman. And we'd be here, thank you very much, Chairman Tumulty and Chairman Murphy. And members of the committee, for allowing me to testify today. For the record, my name is Stephen Tolman, and I speak here today on behalf of working men and women of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO in support of House Bill 2265, an act to restore collective bargaining for teachers and other school employees. This bill would restore collective voice for teachers who chose to work in the very schools where their dedication and their professionalism is needed most, those with designations as underperforming at levels 4 and 5, Mr. Chairman. As it stands today, educators at schools designated at levels 4 and 5 have lost their collective bargaining rights as a result of legislation passed in 2010, an act relative to the achievement gap. Unlike nearly all other educators throughout the state, teachers in schools deemed underperforming are denied a voice on issues such as length of the school year, length of the school day, staff schedules, teachers' preparation periods, the number of periods a teacher must teach, health and safety issues, professional development, and salaries. Remember that paragraph, because I want to speak to it afterwards. It's widely acknowledged that Massachusetts ranks #1 in the nation in achievement gap, in the student achievement. And in many areas, as we produce the best educated students in the Western world, this achievement happens in public schools throughout the state, where teachers enjoy the benefits of collective bargaining. They have collective bargaining agreements, and we're #1 in the nation in many areas. If collective bargaining hasn't been an impediment to students' achievement in the vast majority of schools, why would it and should it stand in the way of student achievement in the smaller schools, in the smaller number that are deemed underperforming? Where's the parallel, and how does it relate that collective bargaining is the impediment? by taking away collective bargaining rights of teachers and other school staff, the secretaries, the custodians, people who have worked in there as teachers' assistants at level 4 and 5, it sends a message that they're part of the problem and that they are not entitled to the same rights that other educators and staff have always traditionally had. There are so many great teachers who make a conscious choice to work in challenging school environments precisely because that is where quality teachers are needed most. As a state, we should be ensuring that these educators feel respected and supported so that they stay in these schools, providing stable learning environments so that improvements can take hold. The current system where high student achievement correlates with more rights on the job and low student achievement correlates with fewer rights, senators and representatives sends the exact opposite message that we would really want to be sending. Rather than encourage teachers to stay and be part of the school improvement process, this provision of the law pushes teachers to look for jobs in schools with more resources, fewer external barriers to student achievement, and a voice on the job. That is kind of like the facts of the problems with this issue in these underperforming schools. It should not be penalizing those who have dedicated their lives, but maybe, in fact, largely in count of social issues and financial backdrops in homes and single-parent households that really correlate more effectively. And in the bill, when we talked about it, there were going to be social services provided to communities. Now, you mentioned that I was a colleague, and I was in the Senate when this bill was heard. And I've checked the journals. I have gone back and checked the journals of the Senate, and there was no protracted debate about language that would eliminate collective bargaining in 2010 in the Senate when we did that. I cannot, and Chairman, you were there as well. I cannot speak for the House, but there was never an argument about the achievement, when we had the Achievement Gap bill, about eliminating collective bargaining. And that's what was done by language which doesn't say it, but says one or more parts of the contract could be changed. I don't remember that. I don't ever remember having a discussion about it. And frankly, if it was ever to be said that collective bargaining would be out the window because of underachievement schools, that would never have passed the smell test of a legislature, because that is not what Massachusetts is about. And so I feel that somebody got language in there that nobody picked up, because it's nobody's attempt to fault the dedicated teachers in underperforming schools when we know the extent of the underperforming students is far more than inadequate teachers. So, it is with that in mind that I urge the committee to favorably report this legislation that will restore collective bargaining rights to teachers and staff at levels 4 and 5. And I emphasize staff. We must ask ourselves, what does the school secretary lose, or the custodians? And then when you think about how foolish that concept is, we then must look at the general concentrated active participation that a teacher has in a student's life and ask, why are they penalized? Thank you very much.
Chairman Murphy, Chairman Himmelty, and members of the committee. I am Tom Gosnell, President of the American Federation of Teachers in Massachusetts. And of course, we are totally committed to the education of the hundreds of thousands of students in Massachusetts. We want top-flight quality education. And I would really emphasize, we are really interested in getting top-flight education for our students who are economically deprived. That is exceptionally important for the American Federation of Teachers in Massachusetts. Now, when this bill was before the legislature in 2010, Representative Marty Walls was the House Chair of the Education Committee. I set up meetings with her, with folks from Lynn, Lowell, Boston, and with Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. I wanted to show her the collaborative programs that existed in Lowell and Lynn and Boston and throughout the U.S. And this was the way ed reform should go, emphasizing collaboration. Now, Lowell in particular has become a national model. Now, there is a new superintendent there, so I can't do any commenting on that. But the previous two superintendents and the union president would put on a roadshow about how good collaboration is and what it can produce for the students. And the Level 4 Merkland School, which heavily emphasized collaboration, went from a Level 4 to a Level 1 school. Now, the 2010 bill, as implemented, assumes that the teacher is at fault. Now, that reflected a lot of the national view at that time. Better teachers, that's what we need. The whole problem is better teachers. But of course, the real problem is poverty. Now, we have the best scores in Massachusetts according to the National Assessment Test, National Assessment for Educational Progress. The best in the USA. And we are the most unionized state in the USA. Every single regular school district is unionized. Now, there are other states that are at the same level as we are in unionization, but we are tops. So we're the best in the nation. In the international math and science tests, we are the best in the Western world. We are better than the UK, Italy, Spain, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Belgium, and every single country in the Western world. And we are 100% unionized. Now, nothing against my colleagues or the children in Alabama and Mississippi, but they are at the bottom. Do you know how many collective bargaining agreements they have in Alabama and Mississippi? The big 0. And we are 100% unionized. Now, we currently have 3 districts under state control in any number of schools. Southborough, Lawrence, and Holyoke. What do they have in common? Poverty. The 3 of them have poverty. Now look at the Level 4 and Level 5 schools throughout the state. Schools, not school districts. They're all poverty. So I say to you, representatives of the people, the issue is not collective bargaining. The issue is not quality of teaching. The issue is poverty. And I would say in 2010, the push by the House Chair of the Education Committee at that time fit in very well with what was then a national viewpoint. Punitive. That was the view, punitive. So I emphasize again, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we are the best in the nation. We're 100% unionized. In the international math and science tests, we are the best in the Western world. Our kids are valuable, our kids are exceptionally important, and I submit to you that collective bargaining enhances their education. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions? Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would, don't think that this is an unintended consequence. What happened is teachers. And I think we're going to fix this injustice and fix it quickly. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative, somebody missed you earlier. Representative Khan, anything want to come up with you?
No, we're on two different.
Okay.
But thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking me out of order. I'm Representative Corey Atkins, and I represent the 14th Middlesex District. I'm here today to ask your support for House Bill number 3878, which is an act relative to firefighters in the town of Concord. Unfortunately, the average price of a home in the town of Concord is $914,000. And we've had a 26% increase in the price of real estate in the last decade, making it very hard for our firefighters to be able to afford anything within close proximity. So we're asking for the same release that the town of Boxborough got for the same reasons back in 2007, I believe, so that we can have a broader recruitment area for our firefighters. Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Representative Khan?
Dan, you want to bring up my city council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Murphy and Chairman Tumulty, and to the committee for allowing us to present out of turn. And I bring with me Emily Norton. She is a city councilor and is representing 24 members of our new city council. We were a board of aldermen. We've just, thanks Emily, we've just moved to become city council. And so I'm here actually, I want to thank you. In the previous session, the bill that I'm talking about today, House 3885, an act relative to special officers in the city of Newton, you were kind enough to grant us this legislation a year ago, or a session ago, and we're back because it seems that we need to move the age up to 70. So in the last session, we put the age at 65, and this is for police officers who can work as details. And at the time, there were a number of police officers who had taken early retirement and they wanted to continue working. They came back to work as details. And it seems that some of them reached the age of 65 and they would like to continue working. And so we would like to raise the age to 70, from 65 to 70. So the bill doesn't change at all. It's just raising the age to 70. And 20 other municipalities throughout the Commonwealth have actually moved it up to 70 as well. So we're here to ask your indulgence to allow us to move that up to the age of 70. And would you like to?
Yeah, just to say that on behalf of the 24 city councilors in Newton, we strongly support this. We voted unanimously in our Public Safety Committee and then as well on the floor of the then Board of Aldermen. These are experienced officers. That's what we want to be doing these details, and so we think that it makes sense to match the other 20 communities that have taken this step. Folks are living longer; they're very vibrant into older years, so we know that that this would be a benefit to the city of Newton.
Thank you.
Great.
Any questions?
Mr. Khan, Mr. Chair, I'm glad that 70 is the new 60, 65. That's good for all of us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We have a number of teachers. Start with Paul Georges. Paul, there's a panel coming up. Paul, Frank, Beth, Angela, Brad. Anybody else that wants to come up with that? I think you marked out as a panel, I'm not sure.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Do you want to sit there?
I thought I might come up and facilitate. Good afternoon, Chairman Timothy and Chairman Murphy and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Canavan. I'm legislative representative for the American Federation of Teachers of Massachusetts. And this panel consists of local union leaders on H2265. You heard some of the broad policy debate that Steve and Tom talked about, and they'll talk about their experiences in the school districts. Now, we've had a lot of experience with turnaround schools, a lot of experience. We've gone through turnaround situations where we've turned around a school twice, and that was a Lynn experience. And we've had good experiences in districts, and we've had bad experiences in districts, and I'll turn it over to these folks here now. Perhaps we can do it in alphabetical order and start with the Boston.
Oh, I was going to close out.
Oh, well, whatever.
Okay.
We have a pattern order.
Whatever you like.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank McLaughlin. I'm president of the Lawrence Teachers Union. And before I begin, because I did prepare some formal remarks, which I will pass out to you. I'm a teacher. I believe in being prepared. I brought my lesson plan, and I brought you all homework. But before I begin, I would like to frame, or put you in a proper frame of the city of Lawrence. I did see you all on TV the other night at the governor's State of the Commonwealth speech. And at the end of that speech, the governor singled out our receiver, Jeff Riley, with great accolade. And I appreciate that effort by the governor, because things have certainly changed in Lawrence since 2010. But to understand my remarks best, you have to understand Lawrence in 2010, and a lot of it really hasn't changed. It's the poorest community in the Commonwealth. 90% of the children that go to the school there are English language learners, recent immigrants. There's a high percentage of special education children. We have the highest free and reduced lunch in the Commonwealth. And we have the highest number of families living below the poverty line. And with that, in 2010, when we were put into level 5, our superintendent was in Salem Superior Court, where he was convicted and jailed for corruption and malfeasance. And our mayor at that time, who couldn't hire a permanent superintendent in the city of Lawrence, was being investigated by multiple federal and state authorities, which resulted in the jailing of several of his top aides. And now I'm going to begin my formal remarks. Good afternoon, and my name is Frank McLaughlin, and I'm the proud president of the Lawrence Teachers Union. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. As you know, Lawrence is one of, and if I testified this morning it would be 2, but now it's 3 school districts in Massachusetts placed under state receivership. The mayor, the current mayor, Dan Rivera, great guy. The receiver, Jeff Riley, great guy. And I shared the same vision for a better future for the children of Lawrence. I want to reiterate the commitment of Lawrence teachers to their students and families. We work with Lawrence children every day. We see the grinding poverty, the hardships, and the families we face. We desperately want real solutions for our students, and we're working to do that. It is our strong desire to collaborate in a meaningful way with Receiver Riley and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and its Commissioner, Mitchell Chester. I am so proud of the work that we're doing now at the Henry K. Oliver School. And by the way, Henry K. Oliver was the treasurer of the Commonwealth during the Civil War. I'm a history teacher. And the AFT, the national, state, and local, at the national, state, and local levels, we're partners at this school. And there's been a tremendous turnaround effort in the school. And the union has provided an extraordinary length of technical assistance and resources, professional development, and expertise. It's really working into a model school. You know, with that, in 2014, this union in the city, we finally ratified a contract after being in receivership for 2 years and without a contract for 3 years. And that was delayed because of the ed reform law. And all through the process of this collective bargaining, both the Lawrence Public Schools and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, because of this law, made it clear to us that they had no obligation to bargain in good faith over the terms and conditions of our employment. They believed that the education reform law trumped all collective bargaining laws. And we did file unfair labor charges. We do have the best attorneys. We did mediate, and we did get a contract. But the contract that we eventually ratified looked much more like the one that was about to be implemented. Virtually every important section included the sentence, "The superintendent retains final authority and his determination shall be final." Now, my teachers voted for it, barely, because this is all we could do to retain our collective bargaining rights. This isn't Massachusetts. This isn't how collective bargaining should be. It was demoralizing and continues to be. But we have a chance today, because the destruction of collective bargaining in Massachusetts is more than a legal issue or an educational issue. It's a moral issue. Teachers in every city and town in Massachusetts work under collective bargaining agreements. And you know, as President Tolman told us, that Massachusetts is #1 in the nation in achievement. The national data shows that states that don't have collective bargaining tend to be at the bottom of the pack on student achievement. So clearly, collective bargaining isn't an obstacle to student learning, as some may falsely say. In fact, collective bargaining is essential to the educational improvement process. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. Collective bargaining guarantees teacher voice in creating and maintaining the most effective schools for teaching and learning. And teachers who are in the classrooms every day with children know best. Who knows better? And secondly, a stable collective bargaining agreement with fair and transparent rules give teachers the protection and safe space they need to advocate for their students without fear of retribution. You know, parents want protection for their teachers too, because it's in the best interest of the students and families. For teachers to feel safe and secure and to speak out on educational issues. And I do want to tell you, during the political turmoil in Lawrence, the union was the lone voice of reason that was speaking out against what was going on in that city. So, we've lost our collective bargaining. We've lost our voice. Fortunately, we're working with a reasonable receiver. But that may not last. What happens when teachers' voices are silenced? What happens when they're taken away? The all too common result is that bureaucrats that are far removed away from the classroom will make poor decisions that will hurt kids. And that's simply wrong. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time. I want to wrap it up by giving you your homework. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
I'm asking your support. I'm asking you to support Lawrence schools and students by restoring our collective bargaining rights, our voice, and fair treatment to the Lawrence teachers and the families of Lawrence. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Beth Contos. That was wonderful. One thing I want to bring up, collective bargaining ensures that our classrooms are not overcrowded. As it is at the high school level in Salem, we can have 30 students in a classroom. If we didn't have a collective bargaining agreement, who knows where that would be, maybe 40. I'm the president of the Salem Teachers Union. I also am a social studies teacher, so we have a lot in common here. Suspending provisions of a collective bargaining agreement in the case of level 4 and 5 turnaround unfairly blames the teachers who have stuck through those difficult times. Level 4 or level 5 doesn't come overnight. Usually a teacher has been there for many years seeing this happen, or they willingly enter into that situation knowing they're going to spend long hours in the classroom and often spend a lot of their family time and their own personal money to enhance the classroom. As Tom Gosnell pointed out, all chronically underperforming schools or school districts have the same symptoms, poverty being number one, a large number of newcomers in need of language acquisition services, very, very, very expensive and time-consuming. It takes time to learn a language. Nobody learns a language overnight. It's 5 to 8 years on average to become fluent. High numbers of students with special education needs. underperforming or, underfunding or improper distribution of resources to these high-need schools. Instead of turning it over to some receivership that has a layer of built-in expensive management costs, why not redirect those funds and pinpoint it into the tutoring that needs to happen, to the supports that children that are acquiring a new language need. We need special educators, we need bilingual community outreach workers, adjustment counselors, and people who are going to engage families. If I could just tell you very quickly 2 stories in Salem, that's where I teach. 2 levels for elementary schools. One, great panic set in. The teachers were given 3 years to turn it around. 18 months in, city panicked and gave it over to a charter system. The collective bargaining agreement was thrown away. Every teacher that was not licensed, was not tenured at that time, was released. Everyone else had to re-interview. Almost everybody fled because the hammer was coming down in a way that was not going to be pleasant for the children or the teachers. Many of the children that had means left that school or left the school district altogether. Now the city officials panicked and turned it over. We had that extra layer of management cost. No, it's 2 years later, there's still a level 4 school in the same building with new teachers, most of them with less experience, all of them with less experience. There are fewer children, but a higher price tag. We have another elementary school that was also level 4, that was similar. It had a lot of high needs students. Instead of the panic that our leaders went through that first time, we made an administrative and union coalition, and we made our own turnaround plan. We are in the first year of it. We did a year of planning. We contacted Lynn because they had done it a couple of times, and we followed their expertise. And it was a collaboration between our administration, the union, the teachers are at the table. We have monthly meetings. It is a completely different situation. We have tenured teachers in place. We have people with 20 and 25 years experience still in the classroom, making a difference. And what we really did, instead of paying for a management staff that would not give direct services to children, is we're using that money for additional paraprofessionals, for additional teachers, for bilingual counselors, for outreach into the family and bringing the families in on a regular basis. We're only a few months into the new model, but nobody's running, screaming, and yelling from the schools. We did not punish the teachers or the staff for the problems, and we have rewarded them for staying. We're supporting them. We're offering additional services to both the students, the families, and the teachers. So in this case, panic did not rule the turnaround. The collective bargaining agreement was honored, and people with experience are still at the table. And that's really what we need. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brant Duncan. I am the president of the Lynn Teachers Union, and I'd like to share a couple of positive stories where the Lynn community successfully turned around 2 level 4 schools, the Connery Elementary School and the Harrington Elementary School. Ironically, for me personally, I had worked at both of those schools over the last few years. I would like to add, just at the onset, that the labeling of our schools is a disservice to our communities, our students, and our educators. And the labeling of the Lynn community as a level 4 district has a significant detrimental effect. But I am proud to send my 2 daughters to the Lynn Public Schools and offer a few thoughts of how collective bargaining and collaboration can positively impact student achievement. So the onset of the level 4 schools in Lynn, we initiated in collective bargaining with the Lynn School Committee. It was a collaborative and respectful process that honored the expertise of our teachers. It did so in a manner to establish some conditions that were put in place that enabled our students and schools to emerge from level 4 status, and I'm proud to say that we did that in 3 years. But some of the benefits to a respectful, collaborative negotiating process, we ensured a stable workforce in these 2 schools. We established structures for collaboration and time to collaborate. We established a robust tutoring support system to meet the needs of our students. We added a social worker, a librarian, a vice principal, supplemental teachers, pre-kindergarten classes, and focused professional development. Many of these aspects were not in place in 2 of our most neediest schools in the Lynn community. But I will say that it was the collaborative negotiation, the respectful negotiation that enabled our teachers to invest in their schools because they were part of the decision-making process, and that enabled them in the most difficult of circumstances, being labeled level 4, having less due process rights simply because they work with the most neediest of schools and students to emerge from that. So as we move forward, I respectfully encourage you to restore collective bargaining in level 4 and level 5 schools and districts. It is an important aspect to teacher voice in establishing the learning and working conditions most needed for our students in schools. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Cristiani. I'm the political director at the Boston Teachers Union and am here on behalf of my colleagues who are not able to be here. Their testimony, it will be forthcoming in writing to you so you have a sense of what is actually happening on the ground in Boston. What you're hearing from my colleagues is they're hearing individual stories, but there's a common thread. They care about their students. The stories are different, but they're very much the same. Sitting here, I can't help but put on my clinical hat. Most of you know I'm a school psychologist. Even though I work full-time as the elected political director at the Boston Teachers Union, I take pro bono cases outside of the city and work with children across the Commonwealth. At the end of the day, unions are supposed to, and I can attest to my colleagues and the people I serve with, the focus of what we try to do is for children. People hear the word union and they push back. Unions stand for standards. That's why they're in place. As a school psychologist, I don't know what I would have done without the teachers union to ensure that my practice for every single child that I continue to work with is in place. Collaboration. You hear the word collective bargaining. I translate that to collaboration, and that's what you're hearing from my colleagues. Without everybody at the table, I can tell you as a clinician, it doesn't work. The goal is to make things better. Nobody wants bad people at the table. I mean, you can get into the debate of all of that. But if you have licensed people, licensed professionals, school psychologists, administrators, I mean, you're talking different unions, some are not unionized. People who are part of a school community who are saying, we want to be at the table. Why wouldn't you have it? Mm-hmm. That I don't understand. Take away my elected position, take away all of the other things that I do. People are saying they want a voice because at the end of the day, it makes a difference for the children. So I ask that you put the hat on that collective bargaining has to do with collaboration and to ensure that the best things in place get put in place for the children. There's no reason you wouldn't embrace that. There is no reason any professional or any elected official, because I do know, given my work with some of you I know, some of you I don't know, you care about your constituency, and I know you care about children. But please look carefully, because the voices are asking to be there for the children. And the ones who really win at the end of the day, if it's done right, are the kids. So please relook at this. Please look at this carefully, and please support this bill. The standards are in place for a reason from our end, We advocate for children. And as a professional who continues to work in schools and with children across this Commonwealth, I'm the same professional that worked at the charter school, at the Dever School, the same school psychologist, at Boston Latin School, Latin Academy, and I've gone out and I've gone to some lovely private schools and charter schools. I'm the same professional. People are asking to have a voice, so please embrace it.
Thank you. Any questions?
I want to thank you, our very own Teachers Union Rep. Rebecca Cusick, to be sitting at the table with you. I come from Alder, and we've had our share of concerns, and I think you brought it up, Ms. McLaughlin, and someone before you with the last panel. Poverty becomes the problem here.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So we can figure out what are the resources we need, socio-economic, emotional, behavioral issues, how we can best address those early on. We'll still be dealing with these issues.
Right.
I mean, you're not hearing these issues in these higher socioeconomic communities. You're just not. It's the Fall River, it's the Holyoke, it's the Springfield, it's the Bedford, the Lawn. And I use those as my top 5, or shall I say, 5. And we need to figure out a way, as we look ahead to seeing what the foundation formula group is going to come up with, and if there's any tools, we've all got to get together to figure out how. Not excluding Boston or Salem for any reasons, but we have some serious pockets that require transformative investment. Otherwise, we're going to still be facing these issues. So I want to thank you for being on the front line and all you do.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, I guess. Being the representative lawyer, I guess I'm just wondering, especially for Lawrence, has your superintendent / receiver made any comment on this bill? I'm assuming our commissioner will make a comment. Do we know?
They've made no comment. The only thing I believe I can send you, I'll send you my list of, my wish list on how to change the ed reform law. But it's helpful if you can work with people that are reasonable. So at the end of the day, everything comes down to working with people. And the receiver and I, we come at this very differently. But we've developed a good working relationship to resolve the problems. I didn't think, particularly with the last superintendent that I had to deal with, that conflict wasn't the best way to go at it. And although we're making great strides in this Commonwealth, we are making great strides in education, okay? That's why the immigrant population is coming to this Commonwealth. It's for the great job. We have this school in Lawrence called the International High School. It's labeled a level 4 school, and right now what they're doing is they're reorganizing the high school and they're taking it apart. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is a great school. And the neediest population is coming to this school because they have what the neediest population needs. So they shouldn't be defined by the problem. They're the solution to the problem. And that's what you have to think about as you're dealing with these schools. And it's the teacher's voice that's brave enough with their collective bargaining laws to let the community know this. You know that when you're designated a level 5 school district, they take over the school committee too. Okay, they go in when you're a level 4, they fire the principals. So the only one that's speaking is the union. And any teacher that doesn't have professional status, they're hiding behind their desk. So we're the voice. And I think we're a reasonable voice. And I think Jeff Riley knows that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Johnson, you're one talented individual. So the next meeting you're in front of me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you don't mind, I'm going to have some Chairman Murphy, Chairman Timothy, members of the committee, thank you so much for taking me out of turn. I'm here with Jesse Flint from the Mass Fallen Heroes. I had planned on coming today. I talked to Dan Magoon, who's the executive director of the Mass Fallen Heroes. He couldn't be here today because he's actually going down to Hingham, and they're bringing home Corporal Christopher Orlando. who passed away. And that's why Dan can't be here. But Dan wanted to be here, and he asked me to be here to testify on a portion, against a portion of the governor's bill, which was House 3907. Now, you heard testimony earlier today from a panel on, there was a home rule petition in one of my districts, one of my communities in my district last year. And just to make one thing perfectly clear, I supported the right to have a home rule petition and to have that home rule petition passed. I did not support the portion and the content in that home rule petition, and that is taking the police out of civil service. Now, the reason I have some real concerns about taking, pulling out of civil service is we need to make sure that we protect our veterans. I was very concerned last year when this went through. We had veterans that had gone over to Iraq and Afghanistan and other places to fight and protect us. 1% of our population have made that risk to protect us, and they expected to come back and have the opportunity to go into a public service position, fire and police. That was taken away from them while they were away. I think at this time it would be irresponsible for us to take and allow communities to pull out of civil service without at least having some type of safeguard to make sure our veterans, who, by the way, my dad was one of them, coming back from World War II, and I think we've had civil service from 1880, so most conflicts that we've had, our young men and women coming back from those conflicts had the opportunities to work in good and decent jobs. We're taking that away from them. I got particularly upset because I have a young man that I was in this building 5 years ago, and he was honored. He was given a Silver Star for his heroic action in Afghanistan. And today I talked to him, we're still trying to get him a job. He wants to be a firefighter. He was a nurse, went into a truck that flipped over and saved 4 people while he got shot and wouldn't leave. But when he filed for a job at Massport, he was told he was not qualified to do the job. I wonder what you need to be qualified to do the job. And by the way, he's a paramedic. So not only was he a paramedic, not only is he's a hero, but he didn't qualify because of their policy. We need to make sure that our young men and women that serve, sacrifice for us, have the opportunity to get good and decent jobs. Today's paper, I think they said that the people that are still unemployed at a high rate were minorities and veterans. Today's Globe, we still have veterans that are unemployed at a high rate. In this bill, if this passes, we're going to allow cities and towns to just pull out of civil service, eliminate veterans' preferences, eliminate, more importantly, disabled veterans that get shot or injured, at least have a section in the law that says they will be the last to be laid off. If we're going to do this, we need to send, I believe, to do legislation that says to most of the cities and towns to get money from us, get local aid, get all types of assistance, gets protections, that we have to put a provision in there that notwithstanding the provisions of any general special law to the contrary, we have veterans preference for all of the communities throughout the state to allow them to have the opportunities that they deserve. If they're going to risk their lives for us and for our freedom, then they should have the opportunities to have the jobs. So with that, I would like to just have Jesse, again, from the Mass Fallen Heroes, who does a great job making sure that he protects not only the survivors, but the men and women that are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, briefly say why he thinks this is important.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So my name is Jesse Flint. I'm a veteran outreach coordinator for Mass Fallen Heroes. I'm also a veteran and a firefighter that's actually gone through the civil service hiring process. So I understand firsthand how important it is to returning veterans. In my day-to-day activities with Mass Fallen Heroes, I see several people per week going through that civil service hiring process. And that's an important process for every veteran that's returning home, because they went into the service expecting that right when they came home, and now it seems to be trying to be taken away from them through backdoor legislation instead of bringing it before the people of Massachusetts, because the citizens would agree that veterans deserve this preference. This bill would exempt cities and towns from all statutes within Mass General Law 31, including Section 26, which gives Gold Star family members, disabled veterans, and veterans hiring preference for civil service employment. Municipalities' greater influence should not trump the rights of veterans and Gold Star families earned with their sacrifice. Provision 241 would also deny the rights of surviving children of firefighters and police officers killed or permanently disabled in the line of duty from receiving preference in placement on all entry-level civil service eligible lists. Civil service offers a fair and impartial appeals process for applicants that were bypassed or not hired by the hiring authority. Without Chapter 31 protections, this appeals process would not exist. And that's a very important point, because we see veterans that are discriminated against within civil service and by hiring authorities all the time due to their disability status or what they saw when they were in the service. If 241 is enacted, cities and towns will not be required to have a fair and impartial appeals process. Hiring authorities will be able to deny employment with no recourse offered and no oversight from neutral officials or the state. Though Provision 241, which is the Civil Service Act, has been written so that cities and towns will be able to opt out of civil service, Mass General Law Chapter 31, in the hopes of diversifying their ranks, as brought to you earlier by the town manager of Gloucester, will also destroy the countless other statutes contained in Chapter 31, such as fair and competitive promotions, retirement protections, fair grievance procedures, impartial appeals boards, layoff criteria, as the Senator said, that disabled veterans will not be laid off as it is under civil service, and many other important criteria. These statutes that were written and passed into law in order to provide those in our community that sacrifice for our city, our town, and our state, and our country a path to a well-paying job are the bedrock principles of fairness, efficiency, and efficiency of state and local governments. Providing clear-cut criteria, procedures to ensure fairness in the hiring process, the disciplinary process, and the promotional process, layoff criteria and retirement benefits is vital to the health of state and local government. Allowing cities and towns to exempt from civil service without passing special legislation or the home rule petition with the reasons why these rules should not apply would fly in the face of fairness and transparency. We feel that civil service has been underfunded and understaffed for far too long. Instead of abandoning it, we should embrace civil service and the ideals it upholds and protects. We would ask that we increase the efficiency of civil service by reinvesting in it, increasing funding, adding staff to the department that will allow the same impartial process to operate faster and more efficiently. We recommend creating a position within the civil service to be held by a veteran that could use his or her understanding of the military to allow civil service to better serve veterans and increase awareness of the civil service process to veterans of color around the Commonwealth. Civil service needs a veteran liaison specially equipped to handle specific questions relating to military service, veteran status, disabled veteran status, and veteran makeup exams and military documentation requirements. This would streamline the process within civil service, making it more efficient for veterans to apply for positions and alleviating some of the workload on veteran-related issues. As an example, I mean, it was held up earlier as almost like a guiding light is the new policy from the town of Burlington for hiring police officers. It's a ruse to say that if you score 70% or above, you're getting some sort of special consideration. You're just being allowed to go to the next, to the next section of their hiring process. They offer no preference in their new policy. There's none. Your military service is not held in any special place. You're just another person. They can bypass you and move on to the next person without any reason. So I don't know, that should not be held as the standard. This is what's wrong with cities and towns opting out of civil service. Civil service was enacted with Mass General Law 31 to ensure hiring and promotional process was fair and that nepotism, political correctness did not delegate who was best to do the job being offered. Cities and towns are allowed to opt out of Chapter 31 in civil service. There will be no criteria to ensure the best candidate is getting the job. There will be no criteria for an appeals process, no independent body deciding these important cases. Cities and towns will be able to hire whom they want, when they want, for whatever reason they see fit. This act, to pass this act, is to remove all oversight, all impartial treatment by the state. The statutes within Mass General Law 31 were passed into the legislature with the purpose of fairness and transparency. Civil service provides uniform practices making the hiring process equally fair to every citizen regardless of race, gender, religious persuasion, or creed. The military is open to everybody. So if you want this job, you can become a veteran, and you can get it as according to law as it's written now. And I would just like to end on one last point. I've talked to the VFW, Department of Massachusetts, the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts, Massachusetts Veteran Service Officer Association, and I would like to tell you that everybody is opposed to this legislation. Every single one of them. So,
And if I could just finish it off, Jesse, thank you. If I could just finish it off, that I had asked the committee, Public Service Committee and the Veterans Committee to hold a hearing, which I think you're scheduling, because of the practices that are going on right now throughout the state on bypassing veterans. Cities and towns right now are bypassing veterans, and we are we'd like to bring in HRD, bring in others to show what's going on throughout the state. I think it's shameful, because when a big city police commissioner can make a statement that policing in Fallujah is not like policing in his city, he's absolutely wrong. So I think that we're going to ask those questions, and I believe we're going to have a committee hearing. And I would be only too glad to take any questions on this, and I'm sure that Chris will also.
Thank you, Senator. Jesse,
thank you. Thank you.
Any questions? Joined by Representative Dubois from Brockton.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kenny?
Good afternoon, Chairman, and the members of the committee. John Nelson is going to testify on one bill. We're going to read off the numbers of the other bills, and we've passed in written testimony already. Try to speed the process along for you, sir.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman, Senator Timothy, Honorable Chairman, Representative James Murphy, and other distinguished committee members. For the record, my name is John Nelson. I'm a police officer for the City of Peabody and a member of the Legislative Committee for the Massachusetts Coalition of Police. Massachusetts Coalition of Police, AFL-CIO, represents over 4,200 members across the state. Massachusetts Coalition of Police submits written testimony today in opposition to House Bill 3907, an act to modernize finance and government. The last paragraph of the bill eliminates the need for special legislature to remove specific positions from the civil service process. Currently, under the Home Rule petition special legislation model, communities would have to bring this to town meeting and/or conduct public hearing prior to submitting the Home Rule petition to the legislature. Our concern is that we do not believe that community involvement steps should be eliminated. The removal of any position from civil service should be with full notice, transparency, and participation from the community, not from a quick voice vote from the community select persons or city council. This current language will be abused by some communities to remove their public safety personnel from civil service with no input from the people who are ultimately affected by the decision. The Massachusetts Coalition of Police respectfully request that this portion of the bill be removed and the current process of requiring a Home Rule petition remain in effect to prevent the unilateral elimination of civil service for public safety personnel without participation of the public. I'm also here to testify favorably on the following bills: House Bill 2229, House Bill 2230, House Bill 2236, House Bill 2237, House Bill 2256, House Bill 2314, House Bill 2327, House Bill 2399, House Bill 3885, Senate Bill 1363. The Massachusetts Coalition of Police respectfully requests that this honorable committee vote these bills out of committee favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
That's it, sir. Thank you.
Questions? None? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Paul Larkin and Tom Daly.
Good afternoon, Chairman Murphy, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paul Larkin. I'm a retired police captain from Tingsboro, Mass. I serve as the legislative director for the New England Police Benevolent Association. I have with me Tom Daly from the Worcester Police Department, our local 911, also an executive vice president with the New England Police Benevolent Association. Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, we are here to testify in favor of several bills and in opposition quickly of one. We are in favor of House Bill 2229, House Bill 2230, House Bill 2274, House Bill 2327, and House Bill 3904. I'd also like to talk very quickly in opposition to House Bill 3907, and I know you've heard quite a bit of testimony. We have provided copies in writing of our testimony, so certainly my remarks will be brief. As history shows, House Bill 3907 is sponsored by the governor, and it's only part of a large-scale bill filed to modernize, it's intended to modernize and streamline many laws and procedures here in the Commonwealth. And for the most part, the membership of the NEPBA supports the governor in his efforts. However, HB 3907, specifically Section 5, is not one of them. The civil service law has been in existence since 1884, and the purpose of the law is the same today as it was 132 years ago. I congratulate Senator Donnelly for pointing that out, and our previous speakers also. No community is forced to adopt the law. It's a local option law. It's only adopted not by the fiat of an elected body or an administrator, but by the will of the community. It's first by a petition supported by 5% of the population, and then by a majority vote at a public or a regular town city election. The proposed legislation as written runs exactly contrary to that and would take from the people their support at the ballot box. It will instead allow a political body to, with a single swipe of a pen, without input from either the public or the municipal workers who will be impacted, to remove it. In the same way civil service is adopted, it can be rescinded in one of two ways, each allowing for public input. First way is following the same process to adopt it, local election. The second is by home rule petition. Most importantly, both of these formats provide for public notice. Now, we heard a list of benefits that this law provides, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but there are very specific benefits for our veterans, our disabled veterans, for children of police officers and firefighters that have been killed in the line of duty, for layoff protection, and statewide reemployment for layoffs, okay, and also for assurances that promotions are not due, it will be based on merit and not for political means. With this in mind, I would submit to this committee the following question. Since the law provides voice to our citizens and protections to our employees, veterans, and disabled, why must such a drastic move be made that allows appointed or elected officials to simply do away with it, and a century of protections that are far more beneficial than detrimental? I would also like to add that I listened intently to Mr. Petrin from Burlington, and I noted that how, even though I disagree with the home rule petition and agree with what Senator Donnelly said, how they negotiated to get the home rule petition passed, or to ask the legislature to have for a home rule petition. The provisions of the law as written doesn't talk about any negotiation, doesn't talk about talking to the public. Simply says they can just vote it out. So based on these facts, the membership of the New England Police Benevolent Association is requesting that the committee to vote unfavorably on HB 3907. We thank the committee for allowing us to enter this testimony into the record, and we'll gladly answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you. No. Any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Roberta and Bridget. You wanted to come together, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the committee. Thank you, Chairman Murphy, for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. My name is Roberta Suhlman, and I'm the president of the Board of Directors of the Massachusetts Coalition for Adult Education and the executive director of Literacy Volunteers of Massachusetts. I'm here this afternoon to speak in favor of House Bill 3390 and to urge this committee's support for this legislation. This particular legislation deals with the opportunity to unionize on a statewide basis for professionals and staff who work at state-funded adult basic education programs. Those programs provide services to approximately 19,000 adults each year. There are more than 100 programs across the Commonwealth. They are community-based organizations, local school departments, higher education institutions, correctional facilities, businesses, and labor partnerships. They provide basic reading and writing, adult basic education, ESOL, citizenship, high school preparation, and college and career readiness. There are approximately 700 staff people who would be affected by this legislation. What we would like this legislation for is for us to be able to do what you heard some of the other speakers today talk about, having a voice in the requirements and in the mandates that are imposed upon the state grant-funded programs. Right now, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education sets all the program standards, sets all of the requirements for staffing, sets the grant process, sets the rates for paying for grants, and all of those things affect turnover, working conditions, and ultimately the quality of the programming and the adults whom we teach. The legislation would provide a non-traditional union, which means that it would not be organized on an employer-by-employer basis, but rather on a statewide basis, with the opportunity for the adult basic ed staffers to negotiate with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as it represents the state. And the items that would be covered are professional development and training, conditions affecting recruitment and retention, programmatic performance review, additional payments to compensate professionals for increases in educational attainment, access for adult basic educators to retirement health and welfare benefits, the grant and contract application criteria and process, the manner, method, level, and structure of both the rate-based and non-rate-based funding provided by the department, and dispute resolution procedures. We believe that these negotiations and the ability to have a voice in these standards is of paramount importance to the stability of the adult basic education field, which has experienced and continues to experience rapid turnover in staff and teachers. That destabilizes programming, it disrupts continuity, it impedes quality, and it has a negative impact on the programs on the field as a profession able to continue to recruit new people as the older folks retire out of these positions. And it also has a significant impact on the quality allowed to provided in the instruction to students. I think that what you heard other people say about the reason that they want to have unions and collective bargaining in their school systems in K through 12 are the same reasons that the adult educators want to be able to bargain with the entity that sets the rules for the grant programs that we have. And almost all of the adult basic education that's funded in Massachusetts goes through the Department of Education. It's a mix of federal and state money of approximately $40 million in total. So they are the ones who control